One of my mother's sayings when I was a kid is, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. She's always telling me that, and the same applies for cyber. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So
very cool. So, Alan, how did you get into this industry?
Man, honestly, I ran from it. I went to the military after high school. I realized college wasn't for me because they wanted me to go to class. So I was like, nah, I'm gonna go do something different. So I joined the military, and I scored high enough on, at the time, it was called the ASVAB. I don't know what it's called now, but I scored high enough to qualify for every job within the Navy, with the exception of like 2. And everything that they were placing, it's like this table they have, and they have all these different jobs at the time, and it's like paper documents, you read it, toss it, so on and so forth. And the majority of the jobs, they were IT specific, they were computer specific. But at the time, being a young kid, I was like, I don't want to go on a ship. You don't want to go on a ship, but you decide to join the Navy. I don't know how that works, but so exactly.
Wait.
So I choose the cryptologic technician administrator. It's a really long and cool word for saying special security officer, SSO type work. So that's how I got into the space of special programs. Within that, at the time I worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency. They had this thing called DICAP, which was your old accreditation process for information systems. So I got to learn a little bit about it, and I got thrown into it to do audits because I was deployed in the Middle East, and our ISO, Information System Security Officer at the time, had left. So they were like, "Oh, good, you're gonna do audits." So that's how I started to get into it. That was around 2005, and I ran from it for another 8 years until DICAP finally, faded away, and they were introducing risk management framework. And at the time, it was a really big thing in the industry because everybody was like, "Oh, what do you mean? It's like this doesn't make any sense. Like these controls, and you want us to evaluate them continuously." So it was just a lot of, I would say, uncertainty, right? Because it was something new. But it made sense to me because it was kind of something I was accustomed to, right? Which is change, and change is good because it forces you to evaluate what you're doing right now at the moment that is not going to help you later on. So you need to change in order to be better later on, or 2 seconds or 5 minutes from now. So it kind of resonated with me, and I took an interest to it, and then I got pulled over to the Air Force to work as a program security officer, and that's when I really kind of started to like it, as crazy as it sounds. So I ran from it for a number of years, and ultimately began to like it, and been running with that ever since.
It's a very, very cool story, especially, just as a young man, college isn't for everyone, and you identified that, but apparently you were like a genius because you qualified for all the jobs except for like the top 2, I guess. So
no, I won't say a genius. I'll be honest. Like all throughout school, I was a C student, right? Like if I can do absolutely the bare minimum and get a C, I would do that, right? And when I took the ASVAB, that was the first time. It's gonna sound crazy. That was the first time in anything somewhat academic I actually tried to apply myself. So I actually tried to take the test, put effort into it, and I did pretty well on it. So, but I wouldn't say a genius or anything like that, but just like anybody else, when you finally commit to apply yourself, you can actually do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Like they say, A students work for C students, and B students work for the government.
100%. 100%. Because the C students, we look at it and be like, I ain't doing all this, man, to get no A. Like, the same piece of, excuse me, I won't call it a piece of paper, but the same degree that you'll get, in high school and in undergrad that, you'll spend hours to get an A on, I can do a third of that time and still pass for the C. All you need is a 2.0.
Well, one of the secrets of Silicon Valley is that C students are the best programmers because, like C students are lazy and they don't want to do things over and over again. So they just write scripts, just like automate it, and they don't have to ever do it over and over again. So I think Bill Gates, one of his famous quotes was that he always tries to find the laziest person and put them in charge because they'll figure out the easiest way to get things done.
And that is, I used to use that in school. I had a teacher. His name was Mr. McCarthy. I'll never forget him because he was an Army vet. He was an older guy. He was fairly young, but he used to tell me all the time. He said, "Man, if you apply yourself, you can be so great." And I used to be like, "Wow, I'm doing just fine with a C." And then I broke that quote out to him, and he said, "That is not the intention of that quote." But I'm like, "Well, it's true." So it's so funny that you bring that up because I've been using that since about, high school.
I mean, I think there's some truth to it. Like, C students, they just try to find the easiest way to get from point A to point B. And sometimes that's what's needed. You don't need a complicated algorithm. You just need something that gets the job done.
100%. And let's dig into that a little bit, right? It's not bad, right? I wouldn't say it's lazy, right? I would say no. Don't get me wrong. There are some lazy people out there, but I wouldn't necessarily say lazy. It's cutting through the BS, right? Like a lot of times we make problems harder than they have to be. It's not. Again, you got to get from point A to point B, and some people like to make a bunch of different changes and directions, but if I can go the straightest point, right? The straightest line and get to there, like that's what it is. You're just identifying how to cut through the nonsense or stuff that isn't necessarily required or needed to make things better. So when I worked in industry, that was one of the things to include OSIPJ. That is one of the things that I always looked at and always asked those questions. Always ask why. Why do we do this? And one thing that a pet peeve of mine was when people say, "Well, that's just the way we always did it." So, even to this day on my team, it's like, you want to see me get angry, you want to see me go from 0 to 100, tell me that. That's the way we always done it. That's not a good answer, right? Like, we have to keep up with the risk. We have to keep up with time. We have to keep up with technology. We have to keep up with the pace of life, right? And if you're doing something monotonous that takes a lot of time, that is consuming, that is just, for the lack of better terms, tradition, that's not good enough, right? So we got to slice through the minutia.
That's interesting because as that relates to me, when I first got into programming, like I had no interest in tech whatsoever. Like I thought it was for nerds, but I dropped out of college, and because it wasn't doing anything for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So dropped out of college to start my own business, and at that point I was just like, I was humble, and I was like, I'll start anything that makes money. So I don't care if I have to wash cars, if I have to mow lawns. I don't care. So one of the first things I did was I bought a laptop, and I got my mom's lawnmower and went door to door knocking. Hey, you need your grass cut? You need grass cut? You need grass cut? And the first person who said yes, I tried to cut his lawn, and my lawnmower blew up. I was like, nope, can't grow grass anymore. And somehow, like, my little brother, he was in like 9th grade at the time, and he was learning Photoshop. And I just like sat next to him and watched and like kind of picked it up. And I was like, all right, now I'll just go business to business and ask people if they need business cards. And that became like my new source of revenue. But the point of the story is, because like I was seeing the industry through new eyes and had no kind of like background on how things were supposed to work, I am doing things a lot more efficiently because, you know, since I only have a laptop and my laptop is pretty much the only resource that I need, I don't need to get like a big old office and pay rent and do all this other stuff. I just like have the laptop, I go business to business, I earn my income, and all that income goes to me except for what I pay to get the card spreaded. So, and that kind of pattern persists throughout the course of my business because I started realizing like how much money I was saving by not having to like pay overhead. And back then, like, having an office was like a huge thing, but I didn't need an office, right? Like I only need a laptop. Like, so it's interesting because I was looking through this industry through new eyes. Like I didn't have a choice but to innovate. And that's pretty much all I ever did. I was just innovating because I didn't know what I was doing was supposed to be wrong, right?
You're right.
So I had customers and they would want a website and, you know, just go on YouTube and learn how to like build Flash websites. And I'll give them these amazing Flash websites with music and like all types of cool stuff just popping at you. And people really enjoyed it. And like, I didn't know I was supposed to like not give them so much for the price that they were paying.
Yeah.
It was all about like just seeing things through new eyes, right? You're not conformed to like this old traditional way of doing things. So you don't know that what you're doing is wrong, or you don't know that what you're doing is more efficient than what other people are doing. You're just kind of doing things the way you see fit.
No, 100%. And you said a number of things I like to touch on. I'll start with the most recent. You know, it's okay. I look towards the youth, right? You know, I'm an old man. I'm 38. So I have a 21-year-old, and I say, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's new, right? And she introduces me as well as my 10-year-old son to different things and concepts, right? And I have conversations with them without them really understand. My oldest understand, but my youngest not necessarily. And it's like when you don't have those mental parameters about how an industry works or what the industry norm is or organizational norm is, like you slice through the minutia. So that's good. I think that is what's going to separate the new wave of businesses that's going to come into existence versus the old businesses that have been around, you know, since the industrial age, right? Is they're playing defense. We're trying to solve problems, right? So it's a little bit of a different game, definitely a different game we're playing, but you know, our approach is different. So a couple of years ago, you saw institutions of higher learning, you know, starting entrepreneurship programs, right? Like I was one school that actually had a degree program in to be an entrepreneur. And I thought that was the most craziest thing ever because it's like, why would you go to school to learn to be an entrepreneur? Like that is just like, that's insanity to me personally. In organizations, they have, you know, entrepreneurship within an organization. It's like, that's an oxymoron in my opinion, right? Like, how are you going to have entrepreneurship in an organization that you don't own? It's crazy, right? So you're still confined to these norms and these standards, but it's entrepreneurship. Like, no, you don't own anything. You can't take necessary risks. Like, you still have to ask permission. Like you can't be truly entrepreneurial, right? And if you, and I'm not knocking higher education, right? It serves a purpose in some aspects, but to go to a university to learn to be an entrepreneur is like going to school to get and I'm not knocking it, but get to a business administration or a business management degree. Like that's a lot of money that you're going to pay to get that, when you can go out here and actually do it and learn in real time. And when you're young, you have one thing that people who are my age or older don't have, which is time. Like you can make those mistakes. You can make those. You can learn from your mistakes early and bounce back much faster because you don't have families, you don't have mortgages, you don't have those overhead things that you talked about, right? You don't have those things. So you can be much more riskier in your strategy and your dreams, right? You have grander visions and dreams because you don't have those constraints that somebody with a family may or may not have, right? And so I say all that, and then there was another thing that you said earlier. You talked about, your entrepreneurial spirit where you started, going door to door when to cut grass. I'm from Rochester, New York. So if anybody knows anything about Rochester, New York, the winters are the worst, right? They start around September and they go until April. And you get that lake effect snow that comes across the water from Canada. And you get snowflakes the size of like 18-wheeler tires, right? I mean, just the biggest snowflakes you ever seen in your life. So as kids, we used to do that. It was snow. We would like being outside. So we would go door to door and ask people, hey, can I show you your driveway? Can I show you your walk path? Right. And that for me started my desire to be entrepreneurial, because I would spend literally, 10 hours outside going door to door shoveling snow in the cold. And I like that feeling to, I put in the work, right? I did this, I laid the salt down and I might get 10 to 20 bucks. So, always knew that I wanted to do something for myself. I just didn't know what. And then here we are, eons later, and I'm doing that. So very similar paths.